Are we ready? You're recording already, right? Yeah.
Of course it is.
Fall for that every time, George. So, right, 50 and Coping is all about finding coping mechanisms for people's problems and troubles. And tonight we are joined by somebody who I don't know very well, but Lee does. Lee's basically known him most of his life. Dave, sadly, has been given a cancer diagnosis, and it's a neuroendocrine cancer, which he will tell you all about because it's complicated and I don't understand it. But what the thing to take from this is not just the cancer diagnosis, but the positive mental attitude that has gone into Dave's behaviour from what I've seen and what I've been told. And that's what we're looking to investigate. This isn't a show of doom and gloom. This is a show about taking on life's responsibilities, whether they be to your own medicines, your own needs, but most importantly, living the life that you have. So, Dave, thank you so much for coming in.
Pleasure.
Mate. Lee, how are you, mate?
I'm good.
That's all good. So, look, can you explain a little bit, Dave, about what neuroendocrine cancer is? Because I'm confused. It's obviously cancer's about cells overproducing, but this one is slightly different.
It is, yeah, and it's a cancer of the hormonal system.
Okay.
So it's really, really not very well known. It's the 10th most prevalent cancer in this country.
Right.
But so few people, including a lot of the medical profession, don't really know a lot about it. A lot of the cancers start in the gastrointestinal systems, so you get lots of small bowel. My primary is in the pancreas.
Right.
People also get them in lungs. And
when you say your primary, what does that mean?
So where the cancer started is in my pancreas.
Okay.
So I have a tumour in my pancreas, and then it's spread across the body, basically. So I have secondary cancers. Okay. So my mets are in my liver and my neck, back and pelvis. So it's about 18, 20 tumours. Okay. But neuroendocrine is very different to other cancers. Like traditional cancer, it's uncontrolled growth. So we have these cells that are getting sort of the wrong messages, and therefore they are growing, hence the tumours. Yeah. But with neuroendocrine, it also throws out hormones. Okay. So lots of people with neuroendocrine cancer suffer with things like flushing, upset tummies, or those sorts of symptoms, and that can lead to something called carcinoid crisis, which can affect the heart as well. Right. I'm very fortunate in that I don't get a lot of that. I have what I call non-functioning tumours. Right. But I still have tumours which we are trying to manage. There are different grades of cancer, and a lot, not all, but a lot of neuroendocrine cancers are lower grade. So my tumours are grade 2, and that means that their rate of growth is slower than many other cancers. So what unfortunately happens when people are diagnosed with neuroendocrine, you sometimes get, oh, you're lucky that you've got this type of cancer because it's different to other cancers, but you're really not. Trust me.
I don't see luck being a part of getting cancer, to be honest. But
it is, for example, say my primary is in the pancreas. Lots of people have a very tough time with pancreatic cancer. Yeah. Mine is different and is at the moment being managed.
Perfect. Okay.
So it's not going anywhere. It's stage 4 cancer.
Which means
it's spread through the lymph nodes. It's spread across other parts of the body. So it's broken out of where it started in the pancreas.
So it's moved from the original source.
It's got into your system, for want of better words. Okay. And it's spread. There may well be others which appear in time. So that means that we're in a situation where it can't be cured, but it is manageable.
So when you say managed, it means there's not too much growth, there's not too much degradation of life, or things you're managing to function. Do you still work and everything? Do you?
Yeah, I think the main things hurt a little bit at times, to be honest with you. And fatigue is a big issue. So you get cancer-related fatigue, and that is partly because I've got all these tumours knocking about, and they're sort of sucking your living daylights out, sort of thing. Okay. So lots of protein, that sort of things. And I'm in a situation as we sit here now, that the disease is stable, so that means they're not growing at the moment, or not growing significantly, and that's on the back of a significant round of treatment which has been done.
Is it right? Treatment. Let's look at that. Is it chemo? Is it that? Well, how do they treat you?
It's something called PRRT, which is an internal radiotherapy. So what happens is, a good thing about neuroendocrine is it throws out these hormones. So that means you can have these scans. You have a whole body scan, and it can find them. It's able to find the tumours, and my tumours were quite easy to find when you have this radiation scan.
Yeah.
The treatment that I have is that you get injected with this, almost like this tracer, so it puts almost like a little flag on all the tumours, and then the radiation can then attack them
just in the local area where
and then you kind of like pass out the rest of the radiation. But what that does unfortunately mean is that each time you have a treatment, you feel bloody awful at times, but also you have to isolate for a couple of weeks each time because you're actually radioactive. So you have to stay away from people for a couple of weeks, and that's quite tough.
How often do you have?
I've had 4 courses of that, which is the maximum you can have in one go. That was every couple of months. So my last treatment was back in April, but cumulatively it kind of knocks you out a bit.
Yeah, no, I understand that. Okay, can we dial back? Right, now we understand where, well, to a very small degree, what you go through. What happened when you were diagnosed? What made you go to the doctor? Or?
Yeah, it was a real bulk. And this does happen with a lot of cancers, but in particular neuroendocrine, in that I had no symptoms other than a bit of wind.
Right.
So I was a bit windy. Lee will tell you that's probably not unusual anyway.
Bit normal, right?
Yep. And it wouldn't go, and you're thinking, oh blimey, this can't be right. Went to doctors. Doctor said, oh, let's just get you checked out. At every check in the book, everything came up clear. Then they said, oh, we'll just check your gallbladder.
Right.
I was laid out, chatty with the person doing it. Suddenly it went all very quiet, and he said, there's 3 big lesions in your liver.
Right.
And it was from that point
that traced it back. Then.
That everything turned around. Then about a month later, I got the neuroendocrine after I had a bit of liver chopped out just to check it, and that at that point. So it was very difficult to cope with initially because it was completely out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And what not expected at all. Really not expected.
Okay, I don't want to cause you pain by remembering this, but what's your initial reaction to being told that you have cancer? You have these things inside you.
Well, it's quite interesting because looking back at the time, I've got my partner always. She goes with me to all of the appointments. Okay. She's brilliant because you only hear little bits, and she writes everything down. And you go back. Oh blimey, I forgot about that.
Right.
The only bit I heard was 20 tumours. That's the only bit I heard.
Okay.
I didn't hear anything else really.
Yeah.
That I would say it didn't really resonate properly for a good couple of weeks. But what I find is that when I get bad news, obviously everyone's very different, I have about 3 or 4 days of complete shock.
Right.
And then after that I start to then try to build in ways of dealing with it.
Okay. I mean, you're sitting here talking to me, in a normal fashion, as a normal human being. This is the key to a lot of this. When you get cancer, it doesn't stop your humanity. It doesn't stop you as a functioning human being, and it certainly hasn't stopped you. But I'm always wondered about how people do start to cope. Because look, 1 in 3 people are affected or get cancer in the UK.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a huge amount. My father has 2 types of cancer, both in remission. He's 86 years old. It's kind of what you'd expect because we're used to it. You're not an old man. You don't have, obviously it's not like you've been given an amount of time by these people. How do you cope day to day? When you get up, is there depression involved in what goes on? Is there a downward look? How do you deal with all that?
I think it's each day brings its own different challenges, and I've never asked my consultant how long I've got.
Right.
People do it in a different way. All I said to him was, will I have a short to a long-term relationship with you? Right. And that's the only question I've asked. And he said, if this treatment works, you'll have a long-term relationship with me.
Okay.
And that's the way that I dealt with that. Clearly, there are some very dark places that you go to, and I would say that initially that was very, very difficult. And you suddenly think, and I think that probably where I have struggled and do struggle with it is that it's taking control. So it's making decisions for me. Now I'm a stubborn little what's it, and I'm not very good at people telling me what to do. Yep. And suddenly there's this thing that at that point I had no symptoms. I do have symptoms now, but at that point I had no symptoms, and that was dictating my life.
How you live your life.
And that's really difficult to cope with. What I do, I generally take it day by day.
Yep.
But there are certain pinch points that become more difficult. So I'm a good one at sort of filling time, fill time, work, go to football, do this, as much as my sort of fatigue allows.
Yeah.
But you have these little pinch points. So when you've got scans, when you're laid out in a scanner, that is a time, because they're quite long, the scans take a long while. That's a time of massive reflection.
Yeah.
When you're laid there.
Are you in an MRI tunnel?
Yeah. It's that sort of thing, and I have to have a few scans, as a lot of people with NETs do, and that's a time of massive reflection. Coming up to appointments.
Yeah.
Because you're sat there, and you walk in there, and there's this chap sat in front of you, and he's on his computer looking at the results, and you don't know if that's going to be you're stable or this isn't good.
So you're trying to glean any bit of emotion or any movement on his face to see where you're going.
Yeah.
It's the same. Like, it's almost a sword of Damocles hanging over your head, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
It's you've got your life that you're living, but no longer is that your own decision.
Yeah, and that brings in all sorts of decisions around what you do on a daily basis, but also work.
Yeah.
I get tired.
What do you do for a living?
So I do. I work for a community benefit trust, which is based in Letchworth. So I'm a town planner by profession.
Okay.
So I'm a director there, and it's not. There are plenty more stressful jobs in the world, but it's not without its stresses.
No, absolutely. So you're a director there, so you're quite high up. But how do they deal with the fact that you're not going to be there for 2 weeks after every treatment and all of that? Is it okay?
Yeah.
I mean,
they couldn't have been more supportive. They've been absolutely amazing. My chief executive support from day one, and fellow directors from day one has been amazing. And I have a really good colleague who looks after what I do, and it could have been so much worse. And it's quite interesting because lots of people in my position have to worry about work and money and those sorts of things. I'm very fortunate in that as soon as the diagnosis happened, I was able to share that very openly and very easily, and I haven't had to worry.
Good.
So I've known, like, I've had a lot of time off. This year, I think I've had something like 21 weeks off.
Right.
Something like that, and that's not a problem. Clearly, I need to think long term as to how how it's going to work and how work is going to happen in the future. But I've been very fortunate in that I've had a couple of very strong foundations. So I've had a very good network of friends, of which Lee is at the heart of. I have fantastic support at home, and couldn't ask for more there. And I have a great family, and I have fantastic support at work.
Yeah.
And all of those things together have provided me with quite a good basis. But it is almost like when you get a diagnosis like I've had and many others have had, it's almost like a study on human behaviours, because people react very differently.
Yeah, for sure.
And what you find is that there are a group of people that you can absolutely trust, some of whom, if you'd said before it all started, who would you think would step up, you wouldn't necessarily put them on that list.
I get that, yeah.
And then you get another group of people who you thought, not so, not a criticism, but it's just
they can't deal with it. A lot of people can't deal with that.
And it's been a little bit like if you have a close bereavement, where in those first few weeks or months, everyone's all over you, and they can't do enough for you. And that's almost like the easy bit. It's that bit
where interest tails off.
A few months down the line, it's old news. And to be honest with you, who wants to hear some little bloke moaning about, whatever he's got? Because that's how it feels sometimes.
Yeah.
And also, sometimes you don't want to talk about it. You want to kind of just talk about
football,
West Ham turning over Spurs or whatever, which was a disaster.
Definitely, we could talk about that.
But you want to talk about that because you can't live it every minute of the day. And the way that I cope with it is to distract myself, which probably isn't the healthiest way of dealing with it at times. But I find things to do at 3 o'clock in the morning when you're awake. That
3 o'clock
catches you a bit.
Yeah. I relate to that. If ever I'm, I've got an anxiety thing. So like when you wake up at 3 in the morning and then all the quietness, there's nothing to deflect the actual thoughts in your brain from it. But also that can be useful in as much as it provides you with a bit of clarity.
Yeah.
So you can check in with yourself.
Yeah.
And I know that sounds a bit pompous, but if you're in that position, the last thing you want to do is confront what's happening, right? Because then you have to start making decisions that are painful.
Yes.
And you have to start thinking about things that are painful. But if you're busy during the whole day, but you do have that hour at night where you're awake, I sometimes find that, yes, it's terrifying, but it actually helps me to understand what I need to decide. I mean, I don't know if that's the same for you, but I've never been diagnosed with anything like that, so I mean, obviously, I don't know. You go through a stage of grief.
Yes.
So my father and I had a conversation about this, and I was saying, what happens? What do you do? And he was saying, there's a stage of grief almost for yourself.
Yeah.
Then your friends, they have a stage of grief, but you're still there. And as you say, the interest tails off because it is, it becomes old news. What do you do when it gets too much? Are you able to talk to your partner? She's your support system with your friends.
Yeah, there's a few support systems. The Neuroendocrine charity, Neuroendocrine Cancer UK, they have something called a Natter groups.
Right.
So, and there's actually one based up in Hertfordshire, and because there's not many of us.
No.
But there's a little group of us who get together.
Yep.
And we just say, this is happening, that's happening, shared experiences. We have a little WhatsApp group. Anytime that I know that one of them will always be there and have that shared experience.
That's key.
That's absolutely
I don't mean
key.
to interrupt you, but shared experience, life experience, addiction, people on the 12 steps. If you've got a therapist that has lived their life, then you can see it, and you've got people who are going through not the same thing but a similar thing
very much so,
through.
And
that's amazing to feel comfort from that.
And it makes such a difference. The other thing is finding the right professional support. So again, Neuroendocrine Cancer UK, they have a partnership with a charity called Rare Minds, and they have counsellors there who know about neuroendocrine cancer.
Right.
I've had I find it like with counselling, you kind of need to find your right match, and it doesn't make them a good or a bad counsellor, but sometimes it just doesn't click, and other times it does. And very fortunate in that Rare Minds have put forward someone who absolutely gets me and understands the disease, works with people with the disease every day, and that's been great. So what that means is I know that I don't always have to go to my friends and family, because sometimes it feels too much to put on people.
I get that.
Even if it's not, but it just feels like that. Sometimes you don't want to spend all your time with friends or your partner talking about it, and you've got this outlet, and that for me has been very valuable.
So vocal therapy with somebody who knows what they're talking about is invaluable, because I mean that is the thing. Your families, if you have a family member who gets cancer like that as well, they might not be able to deal with it all the time. So if you find yourself in a position where you don't want to burden these people, then you do have that outlet, almost talking to a stranger, but obviously the therapist, you create that relationship, which is amazing, because at the end of the day we're always banging on about vocalization of issues and problems, and if you can talk them out, they won't take them away, but it dilutes it somehow. You get an output of feelings, an output of regret. If you are feeling grief for yourself, which has got to happen, hasn't it? then you do have an outlet for that isn't relying on your loved ones, that's amazing,
And when you said earlier about sort of you grieve for your own future, none of us know what our future will bring, but it is you do find yourself grieving for it a little bit. The other bits of support that I have in a close friend of mine is a hypnotherapist. He's very good, and also I've been to see the vicar a few times, and she's been brilliant, absolutely superb, and it could just sit and just say anything, and she just sits and listens. And you see, that's been amazing.
That's what pastoral care is, when you have a vicar who can talk, and you don't even necessarily need to be religious, to do, with all of that. I mean, obviously my father was vicar, and that's where I learned a few things. So pastoral care for is it Church of England vicar?
Yes, yeah.
Right. Also, it being a woman nowadays, there's plenty of women vicars nowadays, which is great. But it's once you've got past that diagnosis and you're walking down the road and your work's accepting you, do you just live day to day? Do you just find that you don't? Do you make plans for the future? How does your brain absorb what's happening?
You kind of find yourself having this internal, like, different people on different shoulders, sort of. They're like the old cartoons, and part of you saying, right, I'm going to do this, this, and this, and this.
Yeah.
And part of you's thinking, stick two fingers up to the disease, I'm going to do this anyway.
Excellent.
Then you've got the other bit, which is saying, whoa, hang on.
You can't do that.
You can't do that.
Yeah.
That'd be silly. And you can't, as always, there's always a bit of a fudge in the middle. And there is a little bit of a conflict, because I do spend a lot of time getting carried away with expectations of myself and not necessarily respecting the disease.
Right.
And what that has created a little bit of a circumstance of a more of a roller coaster than perhaps might otherwise be the case. So I move from doing loads one day to being very tired the next day, but like that all of the time.
Yeah.
Where I need to improve is just trying to level that out a little bit more, and also taking a little bit more time out to look after myself. So I fill myself with time. Then I don't do like some meditation or mindfulness stuff. I can sort of do a little bit of light gym work. I'm not doing that if I'm too busy, and it all has a negative impact. But you find yourself jumping it now, thinking, well, hang on, I could do this. Why can't I?
Yeah.
And then you pay for it the next day. But the other thing that I do think about, I think about like your wedding, for example, if you don't mind mentioning that.
Yeah, of course.
I had a fantastic time there. It bloody nearly killed me for the next 2 days afterwards. But then the way that I look back on that is that I look back on that so fondly about the day and what we did, and that erases the fact that I was done in for a couple of days afterwards.
Yeah, and let's face it, a year prior we didn't even really know whether you'd make it or not.
Exactly.
In the most extreme circumstance, or just weren't well enough to come.
Yeah.
You've been amazingly positive through all of it. When we first met and we had the chat with Rob and people about the diagnosis, and you said, I'm determined to be positive, and positive attitude is the centre of all of it. And you've never, I don't think at any point have shown me anything other than positivity. I know you have your dark times, but what's the difference between positivity and denial? Because I think there's a very fine line between just saying, as you just said, I can do that, I can do that, I can do that, versus a positive mindset of actually coping with it without ignoring it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's a difference.
I think there's almost like three categories. I think there's the fight. You hear people talk about cancer. I'm fighting cancer. I'm going to fight it.
Yeah.
I've been determined not to be like, because I always think if you're fighting, then that's draining.
Yeah.
That's taking
all your energy into a conflict.
Resource out of you, and ultimately, it doesn't. For some people it works. For me, I don't think it does. So you've got like that sort of category. Then, as you quite said, you've got the denial. Well, denial bites you on the arse, and I've done denial, and I've on a number of areas. Not just this, I still think I'm 6 foot tall, and you kind of.
We are. It's just Jim's. Jim's 6 foot 8.
I'm only 6'2".
But it bites you, it gets you, denial. And that's what I found. So there's been a number of times when I've been sort of doing things and I think, right, I'm going to power through this. I'm going to get through this. There's no way I can just do this. I can just do this. Don't be ridiculous, and it gets you.
Yeah.
So kind of that naturally, for me, has naturally eroded a little bit, which then leaves you hopefully with positivity. And for me, it's about trying to have more good days than bad days, accepting that there will be bad days.
Yeah.
And I think that what people don't see, what sort of folk outside my partner and me don't see is the dip. So sometimes I overdo it, and literally I'm sort of just laid out with a hoodie on, which isn't me. That's not how I would normally be. But I think it's, as I said, I need to sort out the roller coaster, the ups and downs a little bit, I think.
But that's a learning process in itself.
Yeah.
You've come to that conclusion.
Is that just, understanding your limitations? But the only thing, my question with that though, if you understand your limitations, are you likely as a human being to dial yourself back too much?
I think
it go both ways?
Yeah, I think it can, and it's really the term that we talk about is living well with, because you get sometimes it feels like just surviving.
Yeah,
that's not living.
No,
and let's try to find a place. No matter what capabilities you do or don't have, it's about finding a way to live well with. So to have those little things to look forward to, and those little things that make you smile. And there's some really bizarre, you find yourself doing some very bizarre things. Like I spend, I'm not ashamed to admit this, but I when I'm laid out in my isolation period, I sit with a teddy bear all day.
Why not?
He just sits next to me, Cecil.
Cecil, do you talk to Cecil?
Yeah.
Because why the fuck wouldn't you?
I know.
If you're I was going to mention this as well, but you brought it back to it. It's a nice one. When you're in seclusion, your partner's not allowed to come near you. Nobody's allowed to come near you, right?
So she can get a couple of meters away from me, but not for too long. We have to use different bathrooms, different bedrooms.
Right. So there's no contact. There's no touch.
No touch.
There can be conversation, obviously, because you do, but there's an isolation.
Yeah.
And we all know from different experiences, the only thing I can tell you about is, isolation in when you're locked up or whatever, and you've got insulation on your own because you've been moved out. That in itself is traumatic.
Yeah, it was tough.
So your coping mechanism with that is to talk to your bear, talk to your wife over the other side of the room or whatever. But, how does it... Do you have existential dread just before your treatment because you have to be in solitude for 2 weeks? Does it cause you mental anguish beforehand? It
does. And I have had anxiety attacks just before.
Yeah.
Before the first one, I was in a right old mess. I generally, the way that I deal with that is I take myself away on my own. I'm better on my own in that sort of situation. So when I go in for my treatments, I go on my own.
Okay. And
a very good friend of ours collects me.
Right. Because that way you're not having to worry about anybody but yourself.
Yeah.
And that's not selfish. That's a security for everyone.
Yeah, it is, very much so. And that means that if I'm upset or unwell or whatever, or normally just talking absolute rubbish in a sort of adrenaline, anxiety sort of rush,
there's no judgment.
Yeah, I see nurses visibly backing away from me in that place because I'm just rambling on about nothing. But I'm better. I'm in times of trouble. I'm better on my own. I found, and also what I do find is that I take myself away. Have little releases. Like I drive a done-in old MG, which just about got me here this evening. I go up to car shows and just walk around for an hour on my own, and that's kind of like there's no neuroendocrine cancer in my head at that point.
It's just you.
And just me
doing what you do.
Talking to some equally sad people about stuff I don't really know about, but cars.
Well, you know what? I've been to my fair share of car shows, and I'm, of course, a cool human being. So look, as far as I'm concerned,
we're all right.
You're all right, mate. I think when you decide how to deal with a diagnosis like this, you know, Lee's always said, and I said to you before off air, you know, you've always been positive about it. How do you make that decision? How do you continue to be upbeat about it? Do you have mantras? You talked about well, what do you call it? When you're
mindfulness.
No, when you're thinking inside yourself, I can't remember the word, completely corpsed it. Meditation,
Yep.
there it is. Right, so, you know, do you have coping methods to stay positive, or do you, because we've talked about denial, and denial isn't, I mean, I think denial would be my go-to.
Yeah.
Because I'm very much, if something's affecting me, I hide from it. Do you know what I mean? A little bit. But you don't seem to do that. You've taken it at face value and you've gone, right, fuck this. I'm going to be positive. I'm going to move forward as much as I can.
Yeah, and there are certainly, you know, as I said, denial has bitten me on the arse a few times, and it will do again. I think that, not wish to go into too much detail, but my parents both had cancer,
right?
And my mum did fight,
yeah,
and I think but we kept our family life as normal as it could possibly be,
right?
And I think that is a good way of dealing with it for us. So everybody's different, so it's not you're not preaching or anything, but
you preach all you want, you're living it.
But we kept everything. We kept a routine. We kept everything as normal as we possibly could, and that's what I have tried to do.
Yeah.
And I think that has helped me to just have the day to day and keep some normality. I mean, to things.
Everyone needs. Well, no, that's not true. Actually, a lot of people need a routine anyway.
Yeah.
Without cancer, without anything, you know, they need a routine to get up in the morning, go to work, do what they do, spend time with their kids, spend time with their wife, go to bed, you know, and repeat. I find that routine scares me a bit because I've always been a bit chaotic.
Yeah.
So, you know, but every time my tattoo shop opens, you know, as long as I'm there, you know, as long as I'm not having teeth operations or anything, then I'm there, you know, and I'm present for it. So keeping up normal life is important.
It is,
because it goes back to the denial thing. Denial, I'm drawn back and back to denial because I suppose I've seen people be diagnosed with this disease, not the same type, but with cancer. And I've seen people just, you know, I've seen one person that I know just completely fall apart. Right, tears, histrionics, the whole thing, which is more than fine. But I've also seen other people. Another friend of mine who is no longer with us. He just took it and just walked through it and lived for 4 years. He had very aggressive cancer, but he didn't fight. He didn't do anything. But you wouldn't know until you know it became obvious. And I think the people that I've met, you know, and now I've met you, are all in the same saying that positivity is the only way you can look at it, because obviously if you take the downside and walk into the black, you're not coming back from that. Because also, you know, the fight side of things doesn't necessarily have to be aggression, I'm going to fight this fucker. It can just be, right, yeah, it'll beat me, might not, whatever, but if I live a positive natural life, then I'm not celebrating the fact I've got cancer by being negative. I'm not diminishing the disease, I'm respecting it.
Yeah.
And respecting the disease, you said that earlier, that's an interesting thing. And by respecting the disease, do you mean you understand that there's going to be limitations, but you won't always let them win?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that and that's the difference with denial.
Yeah.
That you accept and you respect as much as you can, but my God, it's not going to control you.
No.
Because you can't let it. No. You can't let it. But
then that is fighting, isn't it? That is fighting it. You're fighting it in your own way.
I guess it is. I guess it is. And there's fight and there's fight. I'm not angry with it.
No. There's no resentment, no bitterness.
I'm a bit pissed off with it, but I would say I'm not angry with it because I can't. That doesn't change it. I probably was.
Yeah.
I'm probably angrier of what the impact that it has had on my family in the past than what it's having on me.
Yeah.
And I just think that, right, okay, this is happening. We've now got to deal with it. Now, that's not to say that there's days when I can hardly lift my head because I'm so down.
Yeah.
But that is the implications rather than it. Yeah. So that's the fact that I can't work as many hours as I'd like to work, or I'm missing a game of football because I'm too tired to go there, or I can't see my friends as much as I'd like to, or do what we would like to do. And what in my counselling, we're sort of trying to flip around sort of from what we can't do to what I can do.
So you're turning negatives into positive. The only thing is as well is that if you are in denial, and this has now become clear, you're in denial, right? So therefore you're fighting against it and not believing it's happening. Therefore you're being sicker than you normally are because you're triggering it.
Yeah.
So, respecting the disease, that's a good thing. Respecting, and then, your negativity, there's got to be a time where you feel bad. But the difference between accepting feeling bad and fighting, for another word, it means that after you've finished feeling bad, you get up and you function.
Yeah.
You don't let it control you in that fashion, and that's admirable and also slightly amazing. You've basically, I don't want to say what I was thinking. You have found yourself in a position that you cannot control.
Yeah.
That may end your life.
Yes.
But what you haven't done is crawled into a hole and died early because you've said, right, positivity. I've got a support network. I've got therapists. I've got family. I've got a partner who's excellent. And all of these things go towards you. What would be your advice to somebody who doesn't have those things?
I think that there is help. There's always help out there.
Okay.
And that is the really important message, I would say. It took me a little bit of time to find the right help.
Yep.
And I've managed to do it. But there is definitely somebody out there who's going through the same as you. And there is someone who is experienced with dealing with what you're going through.
Yeah.
And the range of charitable organisations, it's said, and that might be a friend, that might be the vicar, that might be a counsellor, or it might be a support group of people going through similar.
Yeah.
And there is always something there. The other thing I would say is I personally think it's important to get yourself into well environments.
Yeah.
Because you spend a lot of time sat in waiting rooms and in clinics and hospitals and so forth. And when I go to the gym, for example, and I don't go as much as I would like to or should, one of the reasons why I go there is that that's a well environment.
Okay. Explain well environment.
You're not surrounded by people who are going through similar struggles. You're surrounded by people who are looking after themselves,
strong,
in different ways.
People,
and that well environment might be the pub with your mates, or that might be at a cricket match or a football match or something. But it's taking yourself away from that environment where you can find that you've got a cloud. Now, that environment might even be your own home, but there's a cloud over you. And being around well people, or what you might perceive to be well, half of them might be going through what you're going through, you don't know. But being around what you perceive to be well people, I think, for me, is quite positive. But there is always someone out there who is going through what you're going and can give you that support.
Cool. So that's important, right?
Yeah.
That's important. There is always someone. And I've recorded some shorts today. Not some shorts, some short videos, just for clarity. And I remember saying, that there's always somebody to help you. And also, don't always reach for family and friends as well. These charities, Macmillan Cancer Charity, your guys, all of these, your charity will be in the doobly-doo underneath. So we'll write them up. It's important, though, to find the right thing.
Yes.
Because also, a lot of people would take those what did you call them?
Well environments.
Well environments.
Yeah.
A lot of people could be taking well environments and it's actually denial. I'm fit, I'm normal, that's why I'm there. But I get your idea. Listen, I don't want to be sat in a room with 50 ill people. I want to be well today. I'm going to go to the gym.
Yeah.
I'm going to go to the boozer and I'm going to drink 4 pints of Stella because I can. Right? Stella's awful, don't do that. But it's important to find the best way to cope for you. But what's interesting is that at no point did you shy away from my question about, if you're on your own. You said immediately, there's always someone out there who can help you.
Very much so.
And is that very much not the health professionals? Do you find that the health professionals are very clinical and it's very much about the disease, and you're never really going to get maybe emotion out of them, whereas you'll get the emotion and the emotional support out of those various different groups?
Yes, yeah, I think that's right. And with the health, I'm very fortunate in who I see in terms of the consultant who looks after me and the nursing staff and everything. But there is a little bit of that sort of conversation with the nursing staff, with the consultant. It's more delivered beautifully, I should say.
Yeah.
This is factually what's going on, and this is what we're going to do about it.
But there's got to be some desensitisation from them, haven't they? Because they are dealing with it.
Yeah.
Well,
maybe not so much, but they're dealing with it on a day-to-day basis,
Yes.
aren't they?
Yeah.
So
The doctors are cause and effect. So they're saying, you've got this, we're going to do this.
Yeah.
The nurses are the same to slightly, but they're a little bit softer, and they're there to ease your transition through it. The only thing I'm thinking now is, because sadly we are running out of time already, I want to know, what are your future plans? Where are you going? What are you doing?
Funny enough, I had a session with a counsellor today, actually, and that's one of the things we're talking about at the moment. Need to have a good old decision about work, and as to whether work is doing me good or not, and whether I'm doing good for them as well. So that's something.
But can I interrupt? Sorry, that's your decision, though, not theirs. They've not pushed you.
Oh no, they're not pushed. That's
amazing.
They've been
so
100% supportive on everything.
Fantastic.
So again, it's about what living well with cancer entails for me and mine, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I would imagine that there are some things that I'd like to start to do. I struggle travelling at the moment because of insurance and that sort of stuff, but that will improve soon. But there are things that I would like to start to look at doing. So I perhaps wouldn't mind doing a little bit of studying, and sort of, which might be a distraction to it. It might just be that it's something I'd like to do, and I want to create more time for myself to do the things that are good for me. So I do want to be able to exercise a little bit more, do more mindfulness, because what's happening at the moment, I'm cramming a little bit and perhaps not doing the important things for my well-being, because my view is it's a little bit about longevity.
Yep.
And also it's a little bit about, okay, I've got a potential life-limiting disease.
Yep.
Who knows what will happen, but there's obviously that strong potential. How can I live as well as I possibly can in that time? And it's not about, then you sort of like, I could do this, this and this. It's a bit like as if you've won the pools and you're trying to spend it very quickly.
Yep.
It's more about just being slightly measured and what can you do well. So is there any travelling you could do well? There are places you want to see, things you want to do, people you want to see, that sort of thing.
So realistic limitations doesn't mean that you're limiting your life. It just means you have to understand the whole big picture of it.
Yeah, and it goes back to respecting that the disease a little bit. So
yeah.
I know that if Lee and I decided to go back a few years and do a clubbing week somewhere, we'd last a day, wouldn't we? But even before all this, but something like that, I know that I couldn't do that, but perhaps we could go away and do that for, I don't know, a couple of goes, sort of thing. So and do that well. And there's lots of things, sort of trying to just think about what that means. And so we're starting to put together a bit of a plan at the moment.
Okay.
Now we've got through kind of like this initial stage, and it's, as I said, it is a bit like a bereavement in that everything's happening so quickly. I was, before I knew it, I was sat having this stuff injected in me, and it felt like that amount of time from when they sat me down and told me what was going on. And just need a little bit of time to just get my head and understand what's going on, and then start to plan around what we can reasonably do to live well with that.
It seems to me that you've had a stage of angst, stage of grief for yourself, stage of grief for your family and your people, and now you're going to go and live the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Be that 5 years, 2 years, 20 years, 200 years, whatever the fuck that is. You're making a plan. And you know what's good to hear from me, my point of view, is that you're a man with cancer, but you've got a plan. And the plan is the key.
Yes. Yeah.
We're going to have to finish, mate. Thank you so much for coming
Pleasure.
in. That's an amazing thing. I just want to say that if you are living with any type of cancer, then what's important is you need to find yourself in a position where you can find some people to help you. And as Dave has said, there is always someone who will. All of the cancer charities, you know, these people aren't on television telling you that they do these things. They're not lying to you. They're not selling you anything. They're there to help you. You are not a burden. You are not a problem. But what you have to do is get help for yourself so your family and everyone else can function around you. It's important. Thanks for watching 50 and Coping. We will see you next time.